Tonight, a perspective on the city of Providence from a Brown student. I think you'll find it interesting. Welcome to My State of Mind. I am Dan York. This is a Friday evening, and thank God it's Friday for all sorts of reasons. It's a beautiful weekend, Native American summer, right? Because I'm just trying to be politically correct. You get what I mean, don't you? Yeah, this is. I always like to talk to the young people, and this happens to be a very bright young person who threw an op-ed piece into the Providence Journal that caught our attention here, and I'm interested in her perspective on some things. I'm sure you will be too when we engage her dialogue. In the meantime, we've got things to do and rundowns to run and issues to present. Yeah, this was very disconcerting today, and I'll explain to you why. This is an administration that's trying to make a comeback, and better late than never, I guess, is the theme. The Providence Phoenix says goodbye with its last edition, and what else do we have? I got to make a correction tonight. You know that I'm not shy about corrections, and we need to make one. And hey, how about that one last night? Very interesting stuff. All right, let me get into this right away here. Today, the Rhode Island Ebola story took a very uncomfortable turn. So I was listening to the WPRO Morning News with Gene Valicente, and I was catching the conversation from the executive director of the Rhode Island Nurses Association. And when I heard her talking about Ebola preparation and the lack of it and the worry that nurses, some 18,000 represented by the association, have, I thought to myself, this isn't right, this isn't good, because the health director, Dr. Fine, has been telling us that Rhode Island leads the league in state preparedness for Ebola. So I actually caught up with her on the noon radio program today, and here's just a small piece of what she had to say.
I want to see the plan.
Yeah. Okay.
If there is a plan, I just want to see it. Like the public, I want to be reassured that there is a plan, and what is the plan?
Yeah. So what she's saying is that the Nurses Association hasn't talked to the health director at all about what the statewide plan is for Ebola preparation. And we know that Rhode Island Hospital is kind of like the go-to place. I heard from an ICU nurse today who told me that, you know, they're really not sure, and they're really not all prepped up either. And then the largest nurses union in the state is having a press conference on Monday after they accumulate survey data from their members, also worried about the lack of preparedness. So what concerned me about this is the cluelessness of the state administration on this disparity of information, okay? Kim Kalunian from WPR News was on the road today and caught up with Governor Chafee.
We're doing the best we can. Yeah, it's like anything, it's not absolutely perfect, but we've really been, I think, on the national forefront of preparation.
Well, great, but guess what? The nurses don't know it. Now, I'm not going to sound the alarm. I'm not going to yell fire in a crowded theater, and I have not been using the Ebola for ratings gain, I can promise you, on radio or here on this broadcast. But you got to call a you-know-what a you-know-what. And when the state administrators are saying one thing and the nurses on the ground are saying another, that in and of itself is a public health calamity. What's unbelievable is that this woman made these notes at 7:40 in the morning on WPRO, repeated them at noontime, and by 3 o'clock when I'd left the radio, we're on weekdays noon to 3 on WPRO, Dr. Fine hadn't even returned a phone call to talk to us about this public relations dilemma, let alone an Ebola crisis. I'm sure cooler heads will prevail. I'm sure they'll get their acts together and we get to have a case here. But that was terribly alarming, and we deserve better. We do. We'll see if it gets better early next week. In the meantime, you know, we've got the national conversation on Ebola, and the headline right here, the president's making a little bit of a comeback by bringing Ron Klain in from a former administration to be the senior guy here. He's not a doctor, but perhaps he's a good manager, we hope. Here's the latest on the national discussion of Ebola.
A lab worker who may have been exposed to the Ebola virus in Dallas is quarantined aboard the Carnival Magic, shown here in file footage from the company's website. Carnival says the ship was blocked from entering Cozumel, Mexico, and is now headed back to Galveston, Texas. Officials say the lab worker from Texas Health Presbyterian may have had contact with contaminated specimens from Thomas Duncan, who died at the hospital 9 days ago. Officials say she may have processed his fluid samples 19 days ago. The doctor aboard the ship says the woman and her husband are showing no symptoms of Ebola. Experimental Ebola vaccine trials are underway here at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. This is where 26-year-old infected nurse Nina Pham was transferred from Dallas last night.
She's very fatigued. This is a virus that really wreaks havoc on you. We fully intend to have this patient walk out of this hospital.
Pham taped a tearful goodbye video with coworkers who cared for her at Texas Health Presbyterian. A nurse who treated Pham tells CBS News the hospital wasn't prepared to deal with the virus.
I saw a chaotic scene. It wasn't organized. It wasn't safe. No one really in charge.
Texas officials have asked the 75 workers who had some level of contact with Duncan to sign a legal document agreeing to stay home and avoid public places until they're cleared of Ebola.
All right, so that's the same kind of worry that the Rhode Island and Massachusetts nurses have about what's going on with Ebola preparation on the ground. And that's got to get cleared up but quick, don't you think? And then, of course, there's the travel ban conversation. The president said something about it yesterday.
I don't have a philosophical objection necessarily to a travel ban if that is the thing that is going to keep the American people safe. The problem is that in all the discussions I've had thus far with experts in the field, experts in infectious disease, is that a travel ban is less effective than the measures that we are currently instituting.
Look, it's an open question for me. It may not be an open question for you. But some of these experts in the disease and experts in healthcare maintenance overall, whether it's federal or state, aren't on the same page. So as far as I'm concerned, right now, the whole thing is a jump ball. Say a prayer. All right. For the people in West Africa, too, of course. Next item. That's too bad. The Phoenix newspaper is all done. Here's their front page of the final edition, kind of creative. I think we think that's Roger Williams. We think he is. And there's a teardrop there. And, you know, I'm shedding a tear, too, for the population, for media in general, for the good people at the Phoenix. You know, our media has become kind of horizontal. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there in social media today, but it's not very vertical. In other words, you don't go very deep on stuff. And the Phoenix, I think, at least on an editorial basis, did a nice job, even with its advocacy journalism type of role, a little bit liberal for me sometimes, but they were able to dig deep into stories that really mattered. And so their loss in the landscape, I think, leaves a gaping hole. We'll bring them in next week or the week after, depending on the schedule, to kind of talk about what happened and where we go from here with our print media, at least. Alrighty, can I just offer a correction here? So on Your State of Mind last night, we aired a voicemail that I will not repeat, but it was rather innocuous. But the gentleman was taking on Dr. Pablo Rodriguez, who had been here a couple of nights prior, talking about question 3. He's no on the Constitutional Convention. And the caller was saying that I wasn't tough enough on him because of his abortion doctor role and that he had been performing abortions every day and that I should be taking him up on this. So Dr. Rodriguez is known to be a pretty superior gynecologist slash surgeon, worked in the abortion field. He and others are very upset that I let that one go. Actually, the voicemail brought it up, and I kind of deferred away from the voicemail, suggesting that it wasn't really relevant to the conversation on the CON-CON. So I took no umbrage with Dr. Rodriguez, but he's upset, and understandably so, because the facts are that since 2005, when he had a serious car accident that hurt him badly and took the life of his daughter, God bless her, he has not performed an abortion since. And so there is no ongoing everyday abortion performance from Dr. Rodriguez, and it's very important that I don't bury that correction and make it prominent on the rundown here. It was inadvertent to me. It's not inadvertent to Dr. Rodriguez, and for that, I apologize, and we correct. And finally, Jets, Pats. What a ball game that was last night. It just goes to show you that it is a game of inches. Here's how. All right, hopefully the Giants can pull it together themselves. Up and down roller coaster that it's been this weekend. 425 at Dallas this weekend. Can't wait for that. All right, when we come back, a young lady who's got a lot of thoughts about being a Brown student and a citizen of Providence. Stay with us. So we're always open-eyed, open-eared over the voices in our community, right? And this op-ed piece caught Jess's attention and then mine. recently, discovering a kind of Providence, living in Providence. Kind of interesting. And it's a Brown student. And anytime we get the college students in here, we always have a provocative conversation. Ria, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
Nice to have you. What caught me was one of my pet peeves. You opened the conversation with your original trip to Brown University as your parents are bringing you in, and they're seeing smut shops all the way along. I've always thought that, you know, as you come up 95 and you see Club Desire and you see this and you see that, it's a terrible introduction for people in the city of Providence. Tell me about that experience.
So it was kind of how I describe it. We were in the car, and my father, dearest, was driving along, and suddenly it catches his eyes. You know, suddenly from seeing the conventional McDonald's and stuff, you have these rather unpleasant buildings, and I could see my parents' reaction. They were like, "Are we actually sending our daughter here for 4 years to study? You know, all the way from India?" It was a bit of a shocker. I don't think they saw that coming. They lived in the U.S. for a while, but I don't think we knew enough about Providence. Before coming to Providence, when someone told me that, "Oh, you're going to be living in a city called Providence," I kind of used to scoff at them and say, "Providence is not a city. I mean, I'm from Mumbai, which has, you know, more people than trees around it. I'm not used to that." But after coming here, yeah, it definitely has lots of elements of what.
So how long have you been here now?
I'm a senior,
You're
so
a senior.
almost
in
25.
computer science, and
An independent concentration in migration studies.
which means
At Brown, you can create your own major, so that's what I did, and it draws from various departments like history, sociology, political science.
what do you want to be when you grow up?
Grow up. That's a tough one. I'm not sure at all, actually.
Really?
Yeah, kind of just.
That's a
going with
lot
the
of dough to go to Brown and not be exactly sure what
That
you want
is-
to be when you leave the institution.
flow. That is true. That's why I'm trying to figure out how to stay there longer.
Well, you know, it's a pretty cool spot. I was over there this weekend. Were you over at the mayoral debate that they had over there?
Yeah. For a bit.
What'd you think of what you did see?
It was extremely entertaining, that's for sure. I'm currently taking a class in persuasive communication, and our professor just that very morning had said, "Look out for these things that some of them might do," and sure enough.
Like?
So there's this one statement that Buddy Cianci said that she mentioned he would say as a response to a totally different question to what was asked at the debate. It was about how in the past couple of years he had lost his liberty, his daughter, and got cancer. And it was very interesting how he managed to say that exact answer to a question that was completely different.
Yeah, well, they all come in with insert their answer here, depending on what the question is. Although I thought that thing was completely imbalanced. It was a second Plunderdome trial for Buddy Cianci, but no one's crying a river for Buddy Cianci. Between Rothschild, the professor, and the two opponents, it was a 3-on-1. But again, no one's feeling sorry for Buddy right now. You have some interesting perspective on being a Brown student and living in the city of Providence, and that was your op-ed thesis, for lack of a better term, right? Talk to me about that.
Well, I've always been someone who loves to travel, and I ended up living in Providence for about 2 years before realizing that I'm still kind of a tourist here. I don't know a lot about the city, and I'm going to be leaving in 2 years without knowing much about the city. And 4 years is a decent chunk of time, and especially these formative years. And there's so much here to explore. There's history, there's culture, there's music, art, food. There's a lot happening down the hill from Brown. And that's kind of what drew me in, and I decided to venture off a little more. To be honest, food is what drew me off the hill. Federal Hill was like probably the first time with the Italian cuisine, and then through that I realized that there's a lot happening in the city. It's everything from art at the RISD Museum, which is not that far, to AS220 that has amazing shows and comedy festivals and whatnot.
You point out that most Brown students, I guess even you until you had this revelation that you should like get off campus and check the place out, operate in relative comfort, financial and otherwise, while right down the street public school systems look like they've been abandoned. Talk to me about that.
Well, it is. College in general is a bubble, and I think Brown more so. Just because people are very satisfied on the whole, and I guess when that happens, when you're very happy in your bubble, you don't see beyond very frequently, and why should you see beyond? Is what some students might argue. But it's a very real thing that's around us, and I don't think it's it's something that we should be overlooking, because at the end of the day, we are living in Providence. That is our city, that is our address, and we may not stay on here very longer, but for those 4 years, we do have we should feel some sort of ownership and connection with the city. It doesn't have to be us going into this community and doing social service every day if that's not what our thing is, but maybe just appreciating and stepping back and realizing that, you know, there is something beyond College Hill.
Well, that's fascinating. I wonder how that would dovetail in the conversations that the city has with the Brown administration about how we get along financially. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us.
During my time at Brown, I've picked up my fair share of B's, and I've realized that though I'm interested in everything, I'm not particularly good at anything. But in the midst of my academic adventures, I've also picked up a unique skill set that somebody who is narrowly focused on fulfilling major requirements would not be able to match. I'd like to think that this is what makes me the exception. Because being exceptional is not just about being outstanding, it's also about standing out.
I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, you don't know what you want to do yet, but I think you're going to be good at whatever you do, because you've got a great mind and you articulate your thoughts exceptionally well for a college student, and I think that is that's going to be a plus. That was part of a TEDx exercise. Give me 30 seconds on what that means, because nobody knows what that means other than college students and some really, really, really smart people in the world.
Well, TED is an online platform for pitching ideas on technology, innovation, design, and education. And we had an event at Brown. TEDx is basically the event version of it that you can host on your own. Anyone can put it together. And we had one at Brown, and a couple of students and I auditioned to give this talk. And I got to give the talk with a variety of alumni as well, and it was a great experience.
And what were you trying to bring home in that conversation?
Well, I guess the value of a liberal arts education. I was trying to justify the confusion that I think a lot of us have experienced as liberal arts students, and just the value in being able to understand and appreciate diverse ends of the academic spectrum, from the sciences to the humanities, and how we separate them out into subjects in school, but in the real world, you really need to know facets of both.
I'd love to have you on the radio sometime soon to talk about your role as a student in the city of Providence, going back to our last segment, because I think inasmuch as you've already grasped that it's a bubble and that you got to get out of your bubble every once in a while there's immense pride that does exist between the region and Brown University, there's also a lot of animosity that exists between everyday taxpayers who foot the bill, they think, for a Brown which should be spending a whole lot more money in the city of Providence. There's a $5 million in lieu of tax agreement that Brown has on an annual basis to the city. And there's that whole juxtaposition between value in, value out, what they bring, what we owe, what they owe, that kind of thing. You have a perspective on that at all?
Yeah, well, I don't know much about the details of it in terms of how much we owe and how much, but I feel like in the non-monetary sense, there can be a stronger relationship, whether it involves having more local Providence students, or just people coming onto Brown's campus for various events, or Brown students getting more off the hill and attending local events. I think that kind of a relationship can be strengthened more, and I don't know about how the finances would play in.
But
there.
the sentiment that you express, that a student ought to get off the campus and really at least pay attention to, if not invest in, the culture, community, ongoing part of the city, might in fact, if you're catalytic to that concept growing on campus, it may bleed up to the Brown brass to say, you know what, because if the bubble bursts and there's more flow of Brown into the city, there'd be more recognition that Brown may have to do more for the city, which is in a desperate financial shape right now. So that would be an interesting dialogue for you to have on your campus about that equation, right?
But here's the problem: you don't necessarily want the bubble to burst. You want students to actively leak. Exactly. Like students who want to and seek out, which I hope would be a greater number, to go into Providence, have the option to. But college is in a way intended to be. I feel like it's like. Someone once told me it's like the pre-game to a party that never really happens. I hope that's not true. I hope life is
the pre-game to a party that never really happens.
I don't know if someone told me that or I made that up, but either way, I think it might be pretty appropriate.
The pregame to a party that never really happens. Do you mind if I borrow that? Because I got a sophomore, you know?
Sure.
So I can, by the way,
I don't know.
do your homework, because this ain't no pregame to a party. That ain't never gonna happen. You're a pleasure. What's your final theme for this vast audience about what brown means to you?
Well, can I say it in rhyme?
Sure.
Sure. So brown is so much more than the color of my skin. It's who I am with it.
Okay. Pretty good, huh? Come on the radio with me in a week or two. all right?
Definitely.
You'll take some phone calls. You might be a talk show host. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Get a watch. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Well, you got a watch.
Yeah.
I think Jess hit a home run scheduling that guest. She was terrific. The watch thing, she was a little late for the show. Anyway, your state of mind. This is how you get in touch with us. Leave us a voicemail, email us, or tweet or Facebook post. Don't forget the E in Yorker. It won't connect. Here's a piece of data that inspired this particular Facebook post. The wrong direction, 56% in the latest Pro-Joe WPRI poll. And here's what Dave had to say about it. Rhode Island voters may like to pick their sport. Rhode Island voters vote like they pick their sports teams. They may get angry with them. They may think they're doing a bad job, but they always come back and support them no matter what. Maybe that's why they elect the same people year in, year out. That's Dave's theory. Anyway, all right. Important stuff on Ebola consistency next week, I would hope, Monday at noon on WPRO and back here at 7:30 and 11:30, of course, on my RI TV. Have a great weekend. Good night.